The Council's silence. The great chamber of the Galactic Council was built to inspire awe. Its ceiling stretched so high that even the winged species looked small beneath it. Light poured through crystal walls that showed the stars outside. The long oval hall was filled with rows of alien leaders seated on thrones, each carved to match their world's style. The sound of voices echoed everywhere, voices that carried pride, arrogance, and the weight of power. On this day, the chamber was full. Representatives from the oldest empires debated matters of trade, borders, and wars. Their words clashed like blades, yet each voice was heard in turn. Every species was given time. Every empire demanded respect. Until it was Earth's turn, the human ambassador stood from his place at the far end of the chamber. He wore a simple dark suit, nothing ornate, nothing shining. His face was calm, but his eyes carried something deeper, determination. When he rose, the voices in the chamber did not fall silent in respect. Instead, they grew louder, as if the sound of his presence was something to be drowned out. One alien minister with emerald scales leaned to another and laughed. "Why is this one here? Earth has no fleets, no colonies, no power worth noting." Another, a tall figure covered in silver plates of living armor, shook his head slowly. "The humans are a young race. Let them sit and watch. They have no right to speak in matters of stars." The words spread through the chamber like sparks in dry grass. Soon whispers and laughter filled the hall. Some shook their heads. Some openly mocked. None of them looked at the human with respect, but the ambassador did not sit back down. He stood in silence, waiting. His hands were steady at his sides, his back straight, his eyes locked on the speaker's podium. He did not interrupt, he did not shout. He simply waited, as though he knew something the others did not. The presiding counselor, a being with eyes like burning coals and a voice like stone, turned to acknowledge Earth's place. Yet instead of calling him forward, the counselor's hand moved on. Another world was given the floor. Earth was passed over as if it had never been invited. It was deliberate. The ambassador's name was never spoken. His right to speak was ignored. His voice was erased before it could even be heard. The chamber grew louder with every new speaker. The council debated the strength of fleets, the flow of resources, and the division of power. They spoke of alliances and threats, yet never once did they turn toward the human standing patiently at the edge. From the back rows, a voice rang out, sharp with contempt. "Why does Earth even send one of their kind? Do they believe they matter?" The voice came from a scaled delegate with long fangs and glowing eyes. His words drew laughter from several nearby. Another voice added mockery. "Perhaps they wish to beg for protection. Perhaps they think we will shield their fragile little planet. Such arrogance to think their words belong in this hall." The laughter spread wider, filling the space like a wave. Even those who did not laugh smiled faintly, as though the insult were justified. To them, Earth was nothing, a backwater planet, a species with no fleets, no colonies, no power in the galaxy. And yet the human did not move. He stood tall, calm, and unshaken. He did not lower his eyes. He did not retreat to his seat. His silence was not weakness, it was weight. Those who watched him closely began to feel something strange. The ambassador's stillness was heavy, like a stone dropped in a river. He gave no reaction, yet his presence began to press against the arrogance around him. The council did not notice it yet. They were too loud, too eager to drown him. But small fragments of silence began to grow between the laughter. Whispers faltered. Eyes turned, just for a moment, to the man who stood alone. It was then that one of the younger delegates, curious rather than cruel, leaned forward and whispered, "Why does he not speak? Why does he not fight for his place?" The answer came From an older voice, bitter and proud, because humans have nothing to say, because they know their place is silence. But the truth was far from that. The ambassador remained still, not because he had no words, but because he was waiting for the right moment, waiting for the arrogance to reach its height, waiting for the council to reveal just how blind it truly was. For in his heart, he carried something the others did not understand. He carried the weight of Earth's history. He carried the voices of a people who had survived endless struggle, who had endured war and fire, famine and plague, yet never surrendered. He carried the memory of countless generations who had built their world not with ease, but with pain. And, though the chamber mocked him now, though his name was ignored, though his voice was denied, he knew the truth. When he spoke, the galaxy would listen. The silence of the council was not the end. It was only the beginning. The mockery. The chamber did not grow calmer as the human remained standing. Instead, the noise swelled higher, like a storm building without end. Aliens spoke over each other, their voices layered in arrogance and scorn. The humans' silence became their fuel, and the hall became an arena of laughter. From the upper rows, a scaled minister rose from his throne. His emerald skin shimmered under the council lights, and his long, forked tongue flicked out with every mocking word. "Earth," he hissed, "is a child's world. They crawl where others soar. They beg where others command. Why does this council waste even a seat on them?" The chamber erupted with laughter, sharp and cruel. Some banged their staffs against the floor. Others hissed and clapped their clawed hands together. The human ambassador's face did not change. He neither frowned nor smiled. His calm eyes watched the minister until the laughter quieted, and then he turned his gaze forward again, patient as stone. Another delegate rose, taller and darker than the rest. His body was covered in black armor that moved like living metal. His voice was heavy like thunder. Humans have no fleets to defend their words. They have no colonies to extend their reach. They have no claim in this council. They are dust. The word echoed, dust, and the chamber repeated it like a chant. Dust, dust, dust. Each voice added to the rhythm, each tone mocking, dismissing. To the council, Earth was nothing more than soil beneath their boots. A red-skinned warlord slammed his fist against the stone rail of his seat. The crack of impact silenced the others for a moment. His skin glowed with fire that pulsed beneath, the surface like molten rock. His horns twisted high above his head. "I say this plainly," he growled. "Humans are prey. They fight each other like animals. They bleed each other for scraps of land, and yet they dare stand here in a hall built by empires." His words were heavy with rage. He did not laugh. He did not mock with humor. He mocked with violence, and his words carried a shadow of truth the others nodded at. The laughter resumed. The chamber was filled with voices again, a storm of derision. Some aliens leaned back in amusement, others leaned forward, hungry to spit more venom. But in the storm, there were cracks. A few younger delegates, newer species to the council, exchanged glances of unease. Their eyes drifted back to the human, who had not moved, not even flinched. His silence unsettled them. His calm was unnatural in the face of such humiliation. One of them whispered, almost to himself, "Why does he not leave? Why endure this?" The words were not answered. The human ambassador simply stood, his suit neat, his stance firm. He seemed carved into the ground, as if no force in the chamber could make him move. And in his silence there was power. Power the mocking voices could not see. At last, one of the presiding councillors, tired of the noise, raised his hand. The chamber dimmed slightly as the light shifted at his command. The echoes faded until the laughter thinned. When silence returned, the councillor leaned forward. His eyes glowed faintly, his voice cold. "Human," he said, drawing the word like a blade. "Your world is known. Your people are noted. Yet tell us, why should this council give you voice? What have you brought but your presence? What have you earned but your own survival? The words were meant as dismissal, but they carried something more. They were a challenge. They were an opening. The human ambassador finally raised his head. For the first time, he looked directly at the presiding councillor. His gaze did not waver. His voice, when it came, was steady, low and sharp. "You mock what you do not understand," he said. The chamber shifted. Not all, but enough. The silence grew heavier, deeper. The words were not shouted, yet they struck like iron against stone. The red-skinned warlord snarled, "What nonsense is this? Speak clearly or not at all." The ambassador turned his gaze toward him, calm, unshaken. "You mock humanity's wars, our struggles, our divisions. You think they make us weak, but you do not see the truth. They are the reason we are still here." The hall rustled with unease. The delegates exchanged looks, unsure whether to laugh again or to listen. The human's voice did not rise in anger. It carried no force but truth. Yet that truth began to cut through the air like a blade. The mocking storm had reached its height. The laughter, the insults, the scorn, all of it had climbed as high as it could go, and now, with only a few words, the human began to drag it down. His silence had been his weapon, and now his words would be his strike. The chamber did not yet know it, but something had shifted. Something irreversible had begun. The revelation. The human ambassador's words echoed in the chamber like a whisper that carried the weight of thunder. The mocking voices faltered. The laughter thinned. Delegates who had leaned forward in amusement now leaned back, uncertain. Something about his calmness disturbed them. Something about his quiet defiance cut through their pride. The ambassador did not shout. He did not lift his arms or pound his fists. Instead, he spoke with a voice steady and clear. Each word was placed with care, as though it was heavier than steel. "You say we are divided," he began. His gaze swept across the chamber. Eyes of every shape and color met his, and none could find weakness there. "Yes, humanity has known division. We have fought each other. We have bled in wars that tore our nations apart. But you mistake what that means." The delegates shifted uneasily. The red-skinned warlord bared his fangs, ready to answer, but the human raised his hand gently, not in command, but in calm assertion. The chamber hushed again, as if some unseen weight pressed down on it. Every wound we suffered made us harder. Every war we fought taught us to endure. Every mistake we made carved wisdom into our bones. You see weakness, but it is survival you are looking at. The words sank like stones into water. Ripples spread across the chamber. The younger delegates leaned forward now, drawn into the rhythm of his voice. Their elders frowned, but they did not interrupt. The ambassador continued, his tone even, his eyes burning with a light none could ignore. "Our world is not soft. We did not grow under the comfort of endless resources or the shield of gentle stars. We faced famine, we faced plagues, we faced fire that consumed cities and storms that drowned coasts, and each time we endured. Each time we rose again." The images his words painted hung in the air. Fields cracked with drought, cities burning under bombs, skies filled with storms. Aliens who had dismissed Earth as primitive now felt the weight of its history pressing against their chests. The ambassador stepped forward slowly. His footsteps echoed in the vast hall. No one stopped him. No one dared. He paused at the center, directly beneath the great crystal dome where the stars shone down. His voice grew softer, yet carried farther, as if the chamber itself wanted to hear. "You laugh at our wars. You mock our struggles. But tell me, what species here has risen without trial? What empire here was born without blood? You call us dust, but dust endures when stone crumbles. You call us prey, but prey that survives every predator becomes something greater than predator itself." The red-skinned warlord snarled, his fire flaring. "Empty words," he spat. Yet his voice was not as strong as before. The ambassador turned his gaze upon him, steady and unafraid. Not empty. True. The silence that followed was heavier than any roar. The chamber that had laughed so easily now sat frozen, caught between disbelief and recognition. The alien ministers, who had mocked with smiles, no longer smiled. Their eyes were sharp, uneasy. The human did not look away. He did not yield. He had been ignored, dismissed, mocked. Yet now his voice filled the chamber that had once drowned him, and then came the line that would carve itself into memory. His voice was calm, but every syllable carried fire. You ignore Earth because you do not know it, but you will, because... We are not here to beg, we are here to warn. The chamber shivered. Even those who wanted to laugh again could not. Even those who wanted to shout could not. Something in the human's presence, in his voice, in his history, made the very walls feel tighter. The ambassador let the silence stretch. He wanted them to sit in it. He wanted them to feel what they had never felt before. Fear not of fleets, not of weapons, but of will. For will was what made humans dangerous. Will was what made humans endure. When he spoke again, his voice was low, almost gentle, but it carried a blade's edge. We survived everything our own kind threw upon us. Do you think we will fall to anything less? The words hung in the air like iron chains. And though no weapon was drawn, though no threat was shouted, the galaxy knew in that moment that something had shifted. The Council could no longer laugh. They could no longer dismiss. The revelation was here, and it was undeniable. Earth was not weak. Humanity was not dust. Humanity was storm. The challenge. The chamber of the Galactic Council was still, but the silence was not peace. It was heavy, strained, as if every breath carried tension. The human ambassador stood in the center of the hall beneath the crystal dome, his eyes steady, his hands calm at his sides. He had been mocked, dismissed, laughed at. But now, no one laughed. For the first time since Earth's seat had been given, the Council was listening. The presiding counselor leaned forward, his glowing eyes narrowing. You speak boldly, human. You speak of survival as though it makes you strong. But survival is not power. It is desperation. What proof do you have? That humanity is worthy of this hall? The ambassador's gaze lifted slowly. He did not raise his voice, but every word struck like a hammer on iron. You want proof? Then test us. Push us as the universe has pushed us. See what happens when humanity is forced to rise. A ripple of unease moved through the chamber. The younger delegates leaned closer, their faces lit with curiosity. The older ones frowned, their arrogance cracking with discomfort. The challenge was not spoken with threat. It was spoken with certainty. The red-skinned warlord, his body glowing with fire, rose again. His horns caught the light as his voice boomed across the hall. You dare challenge the Council? You, a child of a single world? We command fleets that blot out suns. We hold armies that have crushed empires. What does Earth have to match that? The ambassador turned to face him directly. His calm did not falter. We have something you will never understand. We have a will that does not break. You speak of fleets and armies. We have faced war without fleets, and we endured. We have faced destruction without armies, and we endured. You measure power by numbers. We measure power by survival. The words carried a weight that could not be mocked. Delegates who had once sneered now shifted uncomfortably. Some lowered their eyes. The emerald-scaled minister hissed, his tongue flicking in anger. You speak of endurance as if it is strength, but endurance without victory is nothing. You endure because you are too weak to conquer. The ambassador's eyes locked onto him. His voice dropped lower, colder. And yet we are here, alive, standing, speaking. How many empires in this chamber can say the same of their enemies? How many of you can say your rivals still live to speak against you? Humanity is not weak because we fought each other. We are strong because despite it, we are still here." A murmur spread through the council. The logic was undeniable, the truth too sharp to ignore. Empires boasted of victories, but those victories came from crushing others. Humanity had no empire, no fleets, yet it had endured every storm its own kind could unleash. The presiding councillor tapped his clawed fingers against the arm of his throne. "You speak as though survival alone makes you dangerous. But what will you do when the council denies you still? When your seat is stripped away and your voice silenced forever?" The ambassador did not hesitate. His answer came swift and final. "Then we will endure again. And when you come for us, as you surely will, you will learn that we are not dust to be swept away. You will learn what happens when a species that has suffered everything refuses to fall." The silence that followed was unlike the silence before. It was not dismissal. It was not arrogance. It was something deeper, unease, fear. For the first time, the council looked at humanity not as prey, not as dust, but as something else. Something they could not control. Something they could not predict. The red-skinned warlord growled, his voice breaking the tension. "If your people are as strong as you claim, then prove it. Show us your power." The ambassador's eyes narrowed. He did not smile, but there was fire behind his calm. "We have nothing to prove. We did not come here to boast of weapons or to threaten with fleets. We came here to warn. And if you are too blind to hear it, then you will learn the lesson the hard way." The chamber seemed to shrink around them. The lights above dimmed slightly, shadows stretching across the walls. The councillors shifted in their seats, their arrogance shaken, their laughter gone. The ambassador's voice carried one last strike, quiet but sharp as a blade. "Humanity is not asking for respect. Humanity is telling you what comes next. If you choose to test us, you will discover that your fleets and your armies mean nothing when faced with a will that does not die." The words hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. No one laughed, no one mocked. The challenge had been spoken, and it could not be taken back. The council had ignored Earth's voice. Now they had heard it, and it would haunt them. The silence that followed, the words of the human ambassador did not fade quickly. They clung to the walls of the chamber like smoke that refused to clear. The great leaders of the galaxy, creatures of scale and fire, of armor and light, sat in silence. Not one voice rose in laughter now, not one hand struck the rail in mockery. The council, built on pride and power, had been forced into stillness by a single human's calm defiance. The presiding councillor, who had dismissed him at first without thought, stared down with eyes that burned like coals. Yet even he did not speak. His fingers, once tapping in arrogance, now rested frozen against his throne. He had seen challenges before. He had heard threats shouted by empires that thought themselves invincible. But never had he heard a warning so quiet, so unyielding, and so certain. The red-skinned warlord, flames flickering beneath his cracked skin, leaned forward with rage still burning in his chest. His jaw opened to speak, but no sound came. The words he wanted, the insults, the threats, died before they could leave his mouth, for in the human's eyes he had seen something he did not wish to name. Not fear, not desperation, something far more dangerous, conviction. The emerald-scaled minister who had mocked Earth as dust lowered his gaze. His tongue flicked nervously, his hands tightening against the arms of his throne. He had seen dust before, and it never looked like this. Dust did not stand unshaken before storms. Dust did not silence a hall with a single voice. One by one, the delegates shifted. Some whispered to each other, hushed and uneasy. Some sat frozen, unwilling to meet the ambassador's eyes. Some, the youngest among them, watched with awe, as if witnessing a truth they had never considered. The human ambassador remained still. His silence after his final words was heavier than his speech itself. He let them sit with it. He let them feel the weight of what they had tried to ignore. He let them understand that humanity had not come to ask, had not come to beg, but had come to declare. Time stretched in the chamber. Moments felt like hours. The stars beyond the crystal dome burned bright, watching like silent witnesses. At last, the presiding counselor found his voice. His tone, once hard with arrogance, was lower now, slower, as if the words weighed too much. Human, your words have been heard. This council will consider Earth's place. The ambassador gave a single nod. He did not thank them. He did not bow. He did not show gratitude for something that was already his by right. He turned, calm and steady, and walked back to his place at the far edge of the chamber. His footsteps echoed, each one measured, each one carrying the weight of Earth behind it. No one stopped him. No one mocked him. No one dared. When he sat, the silence remained. The councillors looked at each other, their arrogance broken, their pride unsettled. They had mocked him as dust. They had called him prey. They had ignored his voice. But now the memory of his words would follow them, haunting their sleep and shadowing their debates. For in his silence, in his calm, they had glimpsed something far more dangerous than fleets or armies. They had glimpsed a truth that could not be denied. Humanity would not be broken. The session continued, but nothing sounded the same. The voices that rose after the human spoke carried hesitation, doubt, unease. Even the proudest leaders found their tones subdued, their confidence shaken. The shadow of Earth's warning stretched across the hall, pressing against every word. In the farthest rows, one young delegate whispered to another, her voice trembling, "If one human can silence the council, what will happen when all of them rise together?" The other did not answer. There was no answer. The human ambassador remained silent now, his role complete. He did not need to speak again. He had left his mark. He had carved Earth's presence into the heart of the galaxy with words alone. And though the council would never admit it aloud, they all knew the truth. Ignoring Earth had been their greatest mistake. The silence that followed was not emptiness. It was the beginning of something far greater. Something the galaxy was not ready for. Humanity had spoken, and the galaxy would never forget.